His ankle's collapsing, no, fine. Back into your happy box, so then you're smiling again, okay.
In today's episode, we'll go through recovery.
3 out of 10.
Awesome.
Full load, quite intense sessions.
Welcome back to the Journey to a Medal series, where I, as an amateur badminton player, tries to win a medal in an officially sanctioned tournament. Simple, right? In previous episodes, I've gone through some baselines on my playing level, as well as how I am training and preparing for my tournaments. You can check them out in the playlist here. In today's episode, we'll go through recovery. It might not be the sexiest topic, but recovery is key to playing better on court. We'll be covering two types of recovery related to badminton here. The first one being recovery from injuries, which I have been getting more of as I get older. I'll take this opportunity to take you through some of the conversations and discussions I've had with my physio and rehab team, as well as some of the testing we do in order to get the green light to be back on court training and playing. And obviously the second type of recovery being the daily recovery from your training as well as your day-to-day matches. Before I go any further, I want to give a big shout out to Chris's team at Rehab and Recover, as well as Joe's team at the Hip Hub at the University of Hull for helping me recover and get stronger over the years. We go back to 2016 when I first had my big injury, which included the dreaded rotator cuff injury, and it happened during competition 2. I remember it very, very clearly. I was on the odd number side of the court on the left and was flick served, and I went out to the back of the court and smashed, and my shoulder popped off, my shoulder socket, from the twisting force, and at the same time popped back in again. So this is quite graphic for some of you. Having never felt something like this ever before, I was in shock, but because of the match adrenaline, I didn't think too much about it at that moment in time. I remember my right arm being numb, and I told my partner, I think my arm just came off, but went back in. But because we were a set up and leading in the second set close to the end, I was desperate for the match to finish, so we decided to continue. 2 points later, I was pushed to the rounder head position at the back of the court and tried to cross court clear, and my arm popped out again. And this time I wasn't able to raise my arm up except my forearm to raise the racket above my head. We then quickly lost the match after, and I had to pull out of all my remaining matches for the day. I couldn't even drive back that day, and luckily someone else was driving. I went to hospital the next day and I was told I suffered an injury around my shoulder area. They believe my rotator cuffs suffered the injury. By this time I couldn't even raise my arm, and anything that required any form of movement around the shoulder area resulted in a lot of sharp pain. I ended up in a sling for a while. And because I've never had an injury like this before, and also I didn't really understood what was going on back then, my recovery process didn't go too well. Eventually, once the initial shock and the pain from the shoulder area subsided, I started on a generic shoulder stability rehab program before going back to playing. But every time I tried to play, I encountered something called dead arm syndrome, where I wasn't able to generate any power with my swings. It was also very painful, and sharp pains every time I tried to generate any power whilst swinging my racket. Hence, for 2 years I struggled to train or play, and every time I go on court it was a painful and frustrating experience. Some days it would be worse than others, and I was very frustrated and confused by why this was happening, until I went to see Chris one day. Immediately he was able to point out that my shoulder had sagged over an inch lower compared to my left side, and that was causing the sharp pains as my shoulder was not able to rotate properly during my racket swing phase. He also found out that I had a hypermobile shoulder, which means I have much higher range of mobility and flexibility than others, but I have very weak shoulder stabilizing muscles. This is a dangerous combo, as a badminton swing is similar to a throwing action, and having a hypermobile shoulder with weak muscles surrounding it, it will just means that it's going to keep coming off. So we obviously worked on immediately strengthening my shoulder stability muscles, including lots of rotator cuff work, and after about 6 weeks I had no pain whilst swinging my racket for the first time in 2 years. I hope you can imagine the relief I had back then. Since then, I've been pretty religious with my strengthening exercises, and you can see why. Luckily, I've not had any repeat injury there, so it's all good. Additionally, you all will also know about the second big injury I've had in my right knee, which I sustained towards the end of 2022. Here's the video of me telling you guys all about it. In any case, common injuries seen with badminton players are knees and shoulders, and this is common amongst the pros too. So I wanted to share some of the conversations and discussions I've had with Chris, as well as some of the testing we've done, especially with my knee before he gave me the green light to go back playing properly. One of the key discussions that Chris talks about is the amount of load we put our bodies through during training or playing, and why managing this process is extremely important. He explains it better than I do.
I use like your happy box sort of analogy here really. So if that's the amount of load that you're doing, so on and upwards, I like you to be in your happy box, okay? So what you probably find is the fact that you've been here and then for some reason rather than or the other, you've decided to do a little bit too much, okay? Yeah. So you end up resting, okay? And then you rest for a bit too long, but then go straight back to where you were because you think, oh, I'm okay now. And then you get that pain again, yep. And then you think, oh, I need to rest again, and then it becomes a bit of a vicious cycle. Yep. Okay, so what we try to do is basically, if you're down at the bottom with the pain, you're doing gradually progress your load, so your strength back into your happy box, so then you're smiling again. Okay.
And then the goal is to keep it there, maintain it there.
Maintain it there, yeah. Just be really aware of how much you're doing and your training schedule, and also maintaining the strength that you've got. I think a lot of people forget the fact that they need to strengthen the muscles, etc. Yep. that you're using on a daily basis. So.
Yep. Can you imagine my brain explosion moment when I realised little and often is much more important than, oh god, I've missed a few days of training here, let's get a big session in. Additionally, one of the key areas we focused on when I was coming in for my checkups were testing. It was important to be able to quantify and measure any progress or regression. And one of the testings we did was measuring the force I was able to generate for my quads and hamstrings to see if there was any progress, as well as imbalances through my rehab routines. Another set of testing which we looked at is through force plates, by measuring how much force I was generating on my jumps, landing, squats, and lots of movements which simulate badminton impact, but also the ability to measure hang time, jump height, as well as any imbalances in terms of impact forces, as well as power generation.
Lovely. And we'll do 3 of these, just have a rest in between. So awesome, pretty good to me. Alright, stop. So if we just look at this last one, because it's the most warmed up there, I normally just press play and then just have a little look. So you squat down, you come up, I look at height, so just that height there, you're pretty even where the toes are, so it shows me that you've got good power through both. Yeah, if you're really lacking through your right hand side,
you lean.
Yeah, that left one would be a bit higher up, okay? So, and then landing wise, okay, so I'm looking at ankles, the ankles collapse in, no, fine. Knees, are the knees collapsing? No, pretty stable there, to be honest.
So when you say collapsing,
yeah, are they going in? Yeah,
oh, okay.
That's it, yeah. And then in terms of like, then we look at hip and thoracic rotation, and again, you look pretty straight with that there. So that's a really good position for you, again, okay. To eye, that looks pretty good from the front on.
Does it tell how much force I've generated? Ah, there we go.
Yeah.
All in all, these testings provide me with information on how I'm progressing with my rehab or training, and it also gives me confidence that we are going in the right direction with my recovery, and making sure staying injury free is the utmost priority. And whilst we're talking about the topics of recovery, I do often get messages from many of you saying, what's the best thing to do when you're feeling pain somewhere but you want to continue playing? Obviously, I'm not a medical professional, but if you are experiencing some kind of sharp pain whilst playing, you should probably get that looked at and treated immediately. You want to keep playing badminton for a long time, not for only a few months. But if you want to look after your rackets, look no further than the premium racket protection tapes on ckydw.com/shop. They help you protect your precious rackets from scratches and chips. If we then look at the second type of recovery, which is the day-to-day recovery after my training or playing, they're split into a few different stages. When I first started this series, I wanted a better way to quantify my training as well as my recovery. For example, my sleep quality, and after some research I decided to go with Whoop. It's essentially a lifestyle tracker which quantifies the amount of stress or strain I put my body through daily, as well as quantifying my recovery needs, including sleep quality and sleep quantity. For data nerds like me, I'm in love with this, as this gives me a better understanding of how to manage my training load as best as I can with our very busy lives, whilst making sure I'm aware of how much rest I need and also what lifestyle changes impact positively on my quality of recovery. I've had Whoop for a few months now and I'm absolutely loving it. I'll leave a link in the description below if you guys want to learn more. Additionally, you all know that I always stretch after my gym or on-court training sessions, and this is certainly a part of recovery which I do consistently. I do find it having quite a big positive impact on me, so I'll continue doing it. I do recommend you guys stretch after your training. I simply have an interval timer on to ensure I hold stretch for the time I need before moving on to the next one. I've covered a lot of it in my previous cooldown video and you can check them out for a more in-depth look. Finally, I've also been getting monthly sports massage treatments from the Hip Hop team. I find that although I'm religiously doing my stretches, these sports massages just takes it to the next level. Anyone who's had one of these massages before will know that these aren't always pain-free and could be very painful if your muscles are super tight. But they are the good type of pain, as they normally work on releasing any knots you have in your muscles, so you should feel a lot better after a day or two after these treatments. I certainly find that I can push a lot harder in training sessions after these treatments, and I now also understand why professional athletes have very frequent massages to keep them in tip-top shape. I hope this video has given you some ideas for your own recovery processes after your badminton. Obviously, Greg and Jenny from Badminton Insight have also covered other areas of recovery in one of their recent videos, so feel free to go check that out too. I'll be showing you the difference in levels of amateur players in the next episode of this series. That's a fun one, so make sure you subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.